Please take your seats. The meeting is about to begin. Remember to speak into the microphone, as this meeting is being recorded for public record. Please stand by. We are going on air in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the June Finance and Economic Resiliency Committee. Pleased to be joined by my colleagues. A lot of important discussions today. I'm going to kick it over to our CFO, then our city attorney, and then we'll get started with the meeting.
Hi, good morning. Today's meeting of the Finance and Economic Resiliency Committee has been scheduled in a hybrid format with a quorum of the committee physically present and remaining members, staff, and members of the public appearing either in person or virtually via Zoom. In order to participate in today's meeting virtually, members of the public may dial 1-888-475-4499 and enter the webinar ID, which is 863-6059-5462#, or log into the Zoom app and enter the webinar ID, which again is 863-6059-5462. Any individual wishing to speak on an item must click the raise hand icon if they are using the Zoom app, or dial *9 if you are participating by phone.
Thank you, Chair. We just have two announcements before the first item. We have two time certains, 10 a.m. MB6 and 11:30 a.m. for MB1. Shall I call the first item?
Yes. Ozzy, you making your way up to the podium lets me know that you have the first item ready. What will that be?
Yes. MB4, discuss First Amendment to the lease agreement between the City of Miami Beach owner and R.K. Ravani LLC tenant relating to the property located at 1691 Michigan Avenue property. Said amendment to include two additional 20-year option terms, enhancement to the lease rent structure, and additional public benefits. MB4.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Ozzy Dominguez, Division Director of Asset Management. This item was brought before, and we went back to negotiate some final items on the term sheet that needed further clarification with the tenant for the property at the Lincoln. We have completed those discussions and negotiations and submitted the item. Since then, we made two more tweaks to incentivize the tenant for completion of the anticipated project. And those changes were to increase the base minimum rent if they do not achieve TCO by 2033. Their base minimum rent will increase to $515,000. And if it's not completed by 2034, then their base minimum rent will increase to $575,000. And that's an additional $70,000 for that year. In addition, we've added some.
Well, Ozzy, help me out with that. Right? Of course, we want it completed. They want it completed, and it's good if we're. As I understand it, the lease wouldn't extend if they don't complete the project, right?
Well, the lease wouldn't extend if they don't complete the project by 2036. So these are some earlier steps to incentivize them to keep the momentum going and get their permits completed or secured and get their TCO done. And with each of those levels, their base rents will increase as well, in addition to their 5-year annual escalations.
Okay.
And then one last stipulation that we added was that if they do not secure their, sorry, just want to make sure that I say it correctly. Yeah, so if they do not receive their master building permit by July 1st of 2031, they do have an option at the city manager's discretion to extend it by 6 months, and that'll buy them an extra 6 months to get it. But if they do not receive it by then they will have some liquidated damages that will start at $500 a day.
And usually I'm very keen to provide incentives to have these public-private partnerships done quicker So for instance, I think the city did very well with Five Park, putting in milestones to be sure that the park was completed before the building was completed, because we learned our lesson, let's call it perhaps some other projects further up north where there was just this huge time frame. But those were public land, and it was like public projects that needed to be done. I don't know if that same incentive and structure really exists here. It's not as if we're asking any public improvements. This is on their property, granted city-owned ground lease, and it's not as if we're giving them anything, right? We're not giving them something except for an extension of a lease, which won't be extended if they don't complete the project. So I'm not completely against this. It catches me by surprise, not in a bad way, right? I know you're being as diligent as possible. Just from, I didn't think there was going to be any updates from the last time. I'm just trying to, on the fly, work through my head. Should that exist? Like, I almost always agree that we should be incentivizing a P3 project to get done sooner, but increasing their base rent when we're actually not giving anything.
We, in addition to the extensions that we're giving them, we're also giving caps to those extensions. Those extensions are typically at market rents, so those two additional extensions will have caps that currently do not exist in the agreement.
Right, but again, only if the project gets done. If
Correct.
they don't do the project, none of this happens. It's not as if, in Five Parks case, we have 2 blocks of city land that is just sitting there undeveloped, and our residents are like, well, what the heck is going on? How do we get this project done quicker? There, you want every incentive as possible to get this project done as quickly as possible. This is sort of like a nice to have because we get more money flowing into the system. I don't know if we want to be, I don't want to say punitive, but really putting pressure to get that done, because we're not giving up city land, we're not giving FAR increases, we're not giving height increases. It's like, we really want this done because it's better economics for us. But if the project doesn't get done, we haven't given anything. We don't have blocks of city land that's just sitting there unactivated. It's kind of on the project owner. That's just my initial take. I'll let my colleagues talk, and maybe if Nick wants to talk on behalf of the project owner. If you guys are saying, hey, this is cool, cool with me.
Yeah, through the chair, I think we have some presentation that we can run through. The real goal here is to really just make sure the city is whole in all scenarios, and then it's also fair to the tenant. And so I think we've worked really hard to strike that balance. It's taken a few different iterations of the term sheet, but I think we've arrived there with this term sheet that we're presenting today.
Okay.
So I have a presentation. Ozzy, can I just use the clicker? Sure. So first, Nicholas Rodriguez, 200 South Biscayne Boulevard, for the record. And I just want to say it's been a pleasure working with Ozzy and with David Martinez. We've had to work through multiple iterations. It's kind of like you pull one lever and it affects another lever, and there's an unintended consequence. So we've had to go through different negotiations. But again, I think where we've arrived is something that is mutually beneficial, where we create an environment where Rivani can be successful, but the city is also getting their revenue increase. So again, we all know the property. It's at 1691 Michigan, between Jefferson and Michigan. This is the existing condition. So the vision here for the Rivani entity is to develop an addition on this rooftop that's very seldomly utilized. You can see there's kind of a ramp to nowhere, and almost nobody parks up here. The phase 2 improvements are a $50 million investment in the building to create an addition on that seldomly used rooftop. It's not generating any revenue now because no one's parking there, so it's better to convert it into revenue generating leasable office space, about 36,000 square feet and 6,000 square feet of restaurant. And we updated some renderings here. I know at the commission meeting it was requested that we kind of try to put these in context, so we'll just run through these quickly. But the idea is an addition on the rooftop and kind of create this campus feel, wellness-oriented office space. And then this is a view from Lincoln Road. We wanted to just give the building a crown, really, and make it a lot more interesting as a visual from Lincoln Road than what you see now with the parking garage. So these are the terms. The ones highlighted in red are really what we spent 99% of our time negotiating since this went to commission in May. And as Ozzy mentioned, the base rent, there's 3 different scenarios, and those are addressing basically 3 different timelines. We essentially have an aggressive timeline that incentivizes Robert to move quicker, and it's a better deal if Robert gets the project done faster. The city collects a higher base rent for a longer amount of time, so it's a lower amount of an increase in base rent. There's kind of a middle tier scenario in which it's very fair to Robert, but it's a little bit more delayed, so it's a slightly higher amount of base rent. And then there's the kind of the outside date worst case scenario, in which case the project took longer, so there's a slight bump in the base rent, but it's really intended to make sure that the city gets their revenue. It's not punitive against Rivani. It's really just making sure that the scales are even in all three scenarios. And then the other term that was at issue that we've come to agreement on is the caps on the market rate adjustment. So when this lease reaches its final term, there will be an appraisal process to increase the value of the base rent. And we're placing caps on the ability of the base rent to be, or the total rent to be increased. So it's not like a blank check here. This provision was kind of an issue for lenders. It's completely unknown what the base rent could be at the end of the term based on an appraisal. So we're just placing reasonable boundaries on how much that rent can increase. So overall, and through the end of the initial term of the lease, which ends in 2051, the first line is what the city would have gotten if Rivani did not purchase this building and do these phase 1 and phase 2 improvements. It would have been about $21 million of revenue. With the Rivani phase 1 and phase 2 improvements, it's $39 million in revenue estimated. So it's an approximate net increase of $18 million. And you'll see here the three scenarios, and the number in green is really the most important thing. Is in each scenario, the city is basically guaranteed their $18 million of increased revenue. As you can see in scenario 3, the worst case, it's a slightly lower value of $18 million, so it's not punitive. The city and Rivani are kind of sharing in the cost of that delay as partners and landlord and tenant, but the city's still getting the revenue increase from the project. And scenario 1, it's the most aggressive timeline. If the project is completed in 2032, that kind of assumes that everything goes really well and all of the entitlements happen and the construction happens with no delays. But as we know, those construction and entitlement process without delays nearly impossible. So we think scenario 2 is kind of the most reasonable scenario to expect, and it's the scenario that's most likely, and it's the scenario that leads to the most revenue to the city. But it's also fair to Rivani because it's not subjecting them to such a significant increase in base rent, something that they can absorb and still be successful. So just showing our work here a little bit, how we got to these figures. The first line is what the building would have generated. So if you look at 2033, for example, they would have received $738,000 in 2033 as base rent in an entire year. Under the proposed terms, it's almost doubling to $1.4 million in that year. And then fast forwarding to the end of the lease, what the city would have been getting around $1 million a year for the lease, they'll be getting about $2 million a year for the lease. And given some uncertainty with the future of property taxes in municipalities, I think leveraging these types of city assets is really important. And seeing this, $1 million, $2 million a year coming in pretty much guaranteed to the city is going to be very important.
Nick, go back to previous years' list, yeah. So even in 2032, we could be looking, let's call it another $500,000 in additional rent revenues above and beyond what's coming in.
Right. And then every 5 years it
And
increases.
is that pro forma? Is that minimum base guarantee, so it could be higher than that, or is there a cap on that? Is that fixed?
So the base rent, it's a two-pronged rent. It's base rent. It would be, in this scenario, $515,000, subject to the 12%. And then there's a percentage rent that's increased from 2.5% to 3%. There's no cap. If the building does better, that 3% will be higher. This is an estimate.
So I just saw yesterday in Brickell a $250 per square foot lease rate. If this building outperforms, we share in that upside. There's no cap on the rent.
Right, absolutely.
But if it underperforms, there is a floor.
You'll get your base rent and you're going to get your 3% no matter what. But if it underperforms, the Rivani and the city share in that underperformance in terms of the percentage rent component.
Okay.
So then again, the public benefits, it's $1 million public benefit package. I think we went through this at the last FERC meeting and at the city commission meeting. There hasn't been much changes to this, but if any
What
questions.
What is the second one?
So a request to contribute towards maintenance and rehabilitation of religious institutional buildings in the Palm View neighborhood, which is right across the street from the project. I think there's a Cuban Hebrew synagogue that is one of the buildings.
Was that here last time?
That was modified from a 17th Street master plan to a request from the Commissioner Fernandez requested us to have this public benefit instead of the 17th Street Master Plan. I think it's it stems from complaints from the neighborhood about the condition of that property. Happy to discuss the public benefits more at,
If that's what you've worked through with others, that's what you've worked.
so the biggest public benefit here is really the Lincoln Road contribution. That's what's most important to Rivani. What they would love to do is some type of park improvement or like playground improvement on Lincoln Road. We have some very conceptual ideas as to what that could be. It would have to go through an HPP process, but just some very conceptual ideas of where and what it could be. Just two different iterations.
Go back to the first one?
Yeah. This would have to go through an HPP process. This is not a full park design or anything, but.
I personally think we should be doing the entire bucket into stuff like this, but it's not a hill I'll die on.
Okay.
That is a public benefit for
Right.
Lincoln Road.
And
That is a public benefit. But that's my take. Again, many cooks in the kitchen and not a hill I'll die on. But I think the more that we could do like this. What was the next one? I don't know about that.
it's just a different design. I mean, we'd have to engage a legitimate playground designer and go through an HPP process, but it's just the renderer kind of coming up.
Ozzy, you create that in ChatGPT on your way in, or what?
It's the first time I'm seeing this, I can't believe this.
Yeah,
It's a little retro,
let's-
you know, but.
aim a little better, okay? Aim higher.
You like the blob better? These are very, very conceptual. We would have to go through.
The
a process.
jellyfish.
Yes. That's all I've got, Mr. Chair. Thank you
So
very
you
much.
two are aligned?
We are totally aligned on this term sheet, and we're good.
I want to just reiterate, Mr. Chair, on the rents, there is no minimum guarantee. It is, I'm sorry, there is a minimum guarantee, but the percentage rent of gross always continues, regardless of, where the benchmark is. Okay.
Even if the asset underperforms, the minimum base rent protects us.
Correct.
And that increases versus what is in there currently?
Correct.
So even if the building goes vacant,
We are
we're
guaranteed the base rent.
perfect. And what is the process this travels? So this gets referred to the June full commission, and it needs two readings there, one reading?
Correct. We will be coming back to the June 24th commission meeting, and then the July commission meeting, and then followed by referendum.
And Rick, for the record, if I can just have it stated again, how insane it is to have like 9 hearings on this stuff. If we just add that to the record.
Okay.
Right, this will be heard, what, 5 times? It's efficiency, friends. Let's go.
We
So
love process.
But it's fine-tuned.
So I think to move it out of committee, we'd be looking for someone to make a motion for favorable recommendation, return to commission with a favorable recommendation to approve the lease amendment as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item passes.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Have a great weekend.
Jason, any small little ones? Do we want to hear from our OIG quick, or are there other small, not small items, but quick items we could get out of the way? Because I know we'll have some other items that'll take up the bulk of timing. Not that I want to defer them all afternoon, but maybe if we do that at like 11:15, 11:30.
Yeah, I think MB3 we short, but the Commissioner Dominguez isn't here, so I think that one might want to wait. But I'm not sure. If you wanted to do the OIG one first? Please. Okay. Let me call the OIG one. MB2. Let me call that. MB2, call on Office of the Inspector General to present their annual report at the Finance and Economic Resiliency Committee and adopt Audit Committee recommendation to institutionalize this practice yearly. MB2.
Joe, how are you? Happy Friday.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, Mr. Green, City Attorney. Joseph Santorino, Inspector General. I appreciate that we were given the opportunity to come and speak to you. This is something that was actually suggested by the Audit Committee. We meet with the Audit Committee periodically, and they review our reports and so forth. And, they suggested, do you ever go in front of the commission or in front of the finance committee? And, we do occasionally, but not specifically to talk about any report. And they really strongly urged us to try to do something. I appreciate that the chair has, agreed to do this. Our annual report comes out usually in early January for the previous calendar year. So you all get copies of it, and you've probably, looked at it and read it. So and most of these things we would talk about, you probably have some familiarity with from that. But I think that there's some value in, going over some of the highlights of it maybe, and the themes that we have found in the work that we've done. And I'll try not to make this too long. I know you have a lot of other things to deal with, but we'll try to go through some of the things we've done, and we can answer questions if you have them. I have with me the distinguished chief auditor of the Inspector General's office. You don't see him too often. He doesn't always wear a green eye shade, but he's always at work, and he's a lot of work to do because he's got most of the work we do falls into the audit area. We'll talk about some of the major audits we did in the past year, I'll start with the marina, something I think most of you know something about and have heard about. The problem that we had with the marina, which was a big audit and a very contentious audit, was there was what we perceived as a deficiency in what they were paying the city. They under the contract they have, they were supposed to be paying a certain amount of a percentage from their gross revenues. We had a disagreement with them about what their gross revenues were, a significant disagreement, and we felt there was a significant shortfall, about $660,000 to the city. That led, as you know, to some negotiations by the administration, and there is a pending item regarding the final settlement, I guess you could say, that goes beyond, the findings, because frankly, the problem that we saw here, and it's a problem, this is a general theme, and we've seen it in many of the audits we've done, is this a tendency to kind of passively accept what some of the contractors are doing. And I know we've spoken to the administration about it, and they acknowledge it's an issue. And I think it comes down to, do we have the personnel to really monitor these contracts? We think that something more needs to be done, generally speaking, in contract monitoring. Even if it's spot checking, it doesn't have to be auditing. We only get to audit them every several years, 5, 6, whatever years. And in the meantime, what happens, of course, is that there are practices that occur where the contractor is interpreting the contract to their benefit, unless somebody is monitoring that regularly to make sure that they're paying what they're supposed to pay. We get into a situation where the city's accepted that for several years and is in a difficult negotiating position because of that. And we worked a lot with the city attorney on this, and I think the administration did a good job in coming up with a settlement that include different aspects of benefits that were going to come to the city. They valued them at about $4.6 million. Then that value would not have occurred without the audit. But we could do better than that, I think. The fact is, I always point out the 2 cents per gallon, that for 40 years we got 2 cents a gallon from the fuel sales at the marina. Nobody ever, and that contract was renewed a number of times, but nobody ever looked at the contract and say, 2 cents. I mean, it's time
So,
to.
Joe, in summation, the recommendation, then Commissioner Suarez. Is there a recommendation? I get where you're going with it. Is
Right.
there kind of an overarching,
Well,
here's,
the overarching is more monitoring at the managerial level.
what is that,
side.
do you have like
I
a
mean,
tangible, here is what we're looking for?
Well, I think that's really a management decision to make,
Yeah.
but there's a need for it.
Okay.
And I recognize it's going to take more time to do that, to look at each contract. And we can help them from time to time, maybe, to say, look, we think you should look at this or look at that. We're willing to work with them, but that's a management function that is not being fulfilled, we think, right now. Other things we've done,
Joe?
Oh, yes.
When you mean mid-level managerial, has your office considered using AI?
I'm sorry?
When you mean mid-level managerial, has your office considered using AI to?
We do. Maybe you want to make, we're not, as far as we would like to be, but we do have some usage of AI in audits. You want to make a comment?
Hopefully better than Ozzy's AI for the playground picture.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair Norman Blayota. The use of AI, we are implemented some usage. We haven't, that's up to each department to the level of AI use that they're gonna implement. However, that's something that is new, is a little concerning because we are always dealing with sensitive information. So sometimes pulling up that to an AI is concerning. So we are giving small steps in order to use AI. But yes, it's in our agenda to use more AI in the future. But still, there's a little concern on the use, especially when we're dealing with sensitive information.
Okay.
I will say that what we have been doing more and more of is data analytics, which is looking at, big picture of models of data and looking at trends in there to pick out issues and problems. And that's something that Norman has a background in. I think one of our auditors has.
Almost, if I'm correct, almost like what a Palantir would do.
Yeah, that I think is an important thing to bring into auditing.
Now, have we ever looked at that? Because as I understand, one of their core pillars actually is government services.
I think that we don't contract with anybody for that, but we do have people who have some training in that. And so, I think in the BTR area, I know Norman has done work on finding problems with, people who haven't renewed BTRs using that.
Yeah.
Before you go, I think part of their
Thanks.
push is like, hey, the money you're going to spend here, you're making back multiple times over besides just, the governance angle, but the amount of money that they're able to use for cost savings for government efficiency, I think is, I'm not overly familiar with the company, but whether it be that company or others like it, data analytics can really lead to good return on ROI.
Well, mostly data analytics we have been using on resort tax to select businesses to be audited, or for example, for analysis for PPP loans on business, or I'm sorry, for employees that have been requesting those kind of loans. Yes, we use data analytics, however, that requires training and right now, to be honest, I'm the only one who really knows data
Right, that's what I'm
analytics.
saying. Is it better to contract that service? We don't have to decide today, but
Right.
something to keep in mind.
Sure.
Commissioners? Yeah.
The other one, a major audit was on insurance compliance, BTR renewals. Businesses that do business, they're required to have insurance as a condition of the BTR. Well, and they'll have that insurance usually at the outset, but do they renew it? When they go for the BTR renewal, are they maintaining that insurance? Obviously, if they're operating uninsured, that creates liability for them, but also for the city. And that's something that we felt needed to be tightened up, because we found that the required insurance was not being verified at the renewal stage. I think we've been told that it's going to be automated by July of this year. I think that's the plan. So we're hopeful that that's going to make an improvement in that area, and we'll be monitoring that. Beachfront management, there's another big audit. That we do that every year, and the reason we do that every year is that the state requires it. We don't have the capacity to audit every contract every year, but that's one that we do look at, and that involves, all the concessions on the beach. The beach is a state property, and we are required by the state to do that, to audit them, as well as to make sure that the proper sand tax is being paid to the state. And I think that's gotten, the last couple of years hasn't been bad. I mean, that involves any big hotel or, Boucher Brothers, and that has concessions on the beach. They're required to, under agreement with the city, to pay the city revenue, and that's something that we audit. And, we always find problems to some extent, but I don't think there've been big problems in that area. Maybe it's because we do audit them every year, that they get the kind of oversight that they need. Resort tax audits. We have 5 resort tax auditors, one of whom is both a auditor and a supervisor of the other resort tax audit. That's a big revenue stream for the city. I think it's about $100 million. I mean, it's a huge revenue stream. We've got 4,000 accounts in the city. We do maybe 150 or so audits, or 160 or 70 a year. So that's, it's a fairly small percentage. They include, some of the major hotels, which are huge audits. It also includes small restaurants and mom and pop things, and it includes, people who might have a couple of units of small short-term rentals. I mean, and so there's a range of difficulty with those. We assessed last year $3.9 million that in unpaid resort taxes. And what the process is that, we don't enforce anything. All we do is we do the audit. We figure out an assessment. It may include, it often includes penalties and interest if it hasn't been paid over a course of several years. And then it goes to the finance department. And it's up to them to, they can be an appeal and that happens. A lot of people don't want to pay, and they want to appeal and say, we don't think you're being fair. And it's up to the finance department to, first of all, to look at it and deal with that. And sometimes they reach a settlement. Sometimes they pay the whole thing. Sometimes they pay less. But they usually almost always pay something. And then if they want to appeal and get a hearing, they have a very distinguished magistrate. Jason Green he's the hearing officer on appeals, and I don't think it's his favorite thing that he does, but he does a good job at that, and he's very fair. And people get a fair hearing, and if they're still unhappy, they can go to court, but that hasn't happened much. It really hasn't. In fact, the biggest, last year we had the biggest recovery, I think, that the city's ever had in a single resort tax audit. The Fontainebleau, they paid $671,000 to the city.
And I'm aware of one that you're working on right now that is in a similar level, and I commend you and your office for finding that. And hopefully we're going to...
Yeah, we can't really talk about that, but yes, we think we're going to break the record this year. And a
lot of and as I understand it, it's not through any type of nefarious accounting. I talked to the owners there, and it was just simple. We got advice from our accountants years ago where you didn't, and it's technical nuance. We didn't have to collect the resort tax on service charge that was applied on tips. Right? From a layman's perspective, I'd say, okay, that sounds reasonable. That's our advice. But your team was there to define that and kind of.
You bring that up, and that's one of the tip area, or at least the service charge tip, is a bone of contention often, because you'll see on your bills 20% service charge when you audit time at a lot of restaurants, and you might assume that's going to the staff, and if all of that's going to the staff, well, it's not taxable. But if the restaurant's retaining some of that's revenue to the restaurant, which is taxable. And we found situations where the entire 20% was being kept by the restaurant. And we've seen situations where the restaurant was charging the 2%, but keeping the 2%, keeping the city's tax revenue, basically. So, that's the kind of thing that happened. What happened just quickly with the Fontainebleau is they were having big events, big time events. You pay $400, $500 to go to this event. And there's food and drink that includes food and drink. Well, they weren't paying any kind of tax on that, but obviously, a good chunk of that money is toward food and beverage, which are taxable. So, and I'm sure they're going to be changing, although we're going to continue to audit them. Actually, we've covered, I think, 3 years. We're going to do some more auditing this year.
And Joe, incredible work. Not that your department is a revenue-generating cost center, but you are saving our taxpayers money, right? That is rightfully
I would
theirs.
say so. In fact, I mean, every year, the resort tax auditors generate more funds for the city than, the cost of their,
Yep.
their salaries. And it's a deterrent effect. I mean, once
Of
somebody's
course.
been caught, I
Yep.
mean, they're going to be more likely to comply in the future, and people
If I
know
could-
that we're
so
serious about it.
I teed you up to bring it home for a landing on a tremendous note. Let's see if we could do that.
Okay. There's a few other matters I'd like to matter, if we have time to just briefly.
How
talk
much
about.
time are we talking?
I'll do it quickly, okay? I just want to mention a few things. So,
I appreciate that.
Waste hauler audits and C&D audits that we do. We have 2 franchise haulers that pay 24% of their gross, and I think we may end up with more haulers that may be coming. They're not properly separating their tax-exempt recycling from their waste recycling. It's the waste that's taxable, but when they get combined together, then that creates a problem. It's up to them to make sure that there's a proper separation and auditing of that, and that we found that to be not being done properly. And I think that the documentation is going to be done by the end of this month. We're hoping that there's going to be an improvement in that. The C&D, basically your demolition type work that used to be just roll-offs, which were stationary receptacles. It was extended by the commission through Commissioner Bott's ordinance to wheeled containers. There was no reason to exempt them, and they had been kind of exempted. So we're seeing more people now coming online. We've had to do some monitoring of people that are operating without permits and who are not used to paying these fees, and that's made us into somewhat of an enforcement. We go with code, and we get tips all the time of unpermitted, un-BTR waste C&D haulers. That's not part of the franchise. There's about 20 or so permitted haulers, but we think there are many more unpermitted ones that are operating. So we're working on improving that. Just the major about the Poseidon investigation, which, showed that when there's a no-bid contract, there's been no due diligence of the contractor. And that was, I think, a real flaw in the city's process. And there is, I think that's already been given first passage basically to fix that problem. We appreciate the commission's action on that. Just a comment quickly about outside employment, which has been a steady problem in the city. We've done 8, I think we're about to put out our 9th report on outside employment by city employees. It's not been well monitored in the past. I think I've seen some changes. In fact, I think the HR has been putting out some emails lately that we appreciate, and I think that might hopefully, people had their own businesses, operating their own businesses, and they didn't think that was outside employment. Well, of course it is, but I mean, they thought, well, let's say get a paycheck someplace else. I want to mention quickly Fire Station 1, which is a sore subject for everybody, but that was it was, and it's happened a number of times, and it's probably going to happen again, late in the process. Let's change this, let's move something here, I'll do something differently after the thing's been designed, after the costs have been incurred. That frankly, probably the several years that sat and nothing happened probably cost the city several $1 million. And we're hopeful that can be stopped or at least reduced significantly in the future. There is an ordinance, Commissioner Fernandez's ordinance, Stop the Pause. There was a Stop the Pause 1 that just applied to major critical infrastructure projects. Stop the Pause 2, I think, got first passage. It's now being reviewed by the Resiliency Projects Advisory Committee, and there's going to be some more changes, and we're actually involved in that. But it's hopefully going to come back to the commission very shortly, and that's going to make for a higher threshold in order to pause or stop a project that's been substantially improved, substantially completed with a higher level of votes required to have that done. That's a real frustration. In fact, we hear from management all the time, and they're not always as able as we are to speak up on these things. But we think that more care needs to be taken when there's been a big investment in a project. It's most of the work's been done. It's online. It's ready to go. And if there's going to be a challenge to it, it should have happened earlier. I think that's something that has cost the city a lot of money. Excellent. Thank you for your time.
Well, it's like that Jack Nicklaus movie from A Few Good Men, right? Where you need me on this wall. It's like I said, not just the things you catch, but the deterrent that it is. So I appreciate you and your team's dedication and service to our city.
Right, thank you.
So, thank you all.
This is an item that's going to be just heard and closed, right? I don't think there's an action. Okay. We'll show the item heard and closed, MB2.
Okay, why don't we hear NB6, Jason, funding for utility projects?
MB6, discuss funding critical resiliency and neighborhood infrastructure through dedicated capital millage and reducing reliance on water and sewer rate increases, MB6.
And John, I'll just kick it off here. I don't know where this is going to go or the structure or format is going to take. I have a feeling a little bit of everything all over the place. I'll give my opening salvo. I think we're all, when I say all, the legislative body, city staff, our residents, aligned that we're trying to thread a delicate needle, right? We have a lot of competing interests. We have tremendous amounts of, whether it just be our core water, wastewater, sewer stuff that needs to get done, to our more ambitious yet still needed infrastructure resiliency. Just this past week or 10 days has been perhaps a needed reminder of the issues that we continuously face that will be compounded. But at the same time, residents in Miami Beach and elsewhere across the region, the county, the country are facing affordability challenges. So we have to balance that, wear many hats. We're at this point where we're at now. I think for my colleagues, while we may have different ideas of how to get to the same place. I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I think we're all trying to thread the needle of getting some of these critical projects across. Perhaps not the full menu of what would be ideal, because every project that we do comes with a cost, right? It comes with a challenge that is going to be borne by the users of the system, which are primarily our residents and our businesses. So that's where we're at. Me personally, I'll just say high level. I'm not dogmatic about this. I want to thread that needle of delivering our core projects, probably not our entire wish list or everything that we had planned, but doing so in a way that is going to be cost effective, efficient, and bearable for our residents. And that's likely going to be, if we want to keep those levels low or at de minimis or even at zero, have to be offset from other areas of our budget. We'll get into various funding mechanisms here. It's going to be my thought, belief, and argument that these should be funded through the enterprise system, and if we want to essentially keep that flat through offsetting expense reductions out of our general fund, I think that is just good governance and city municipal financing. But let me turn it over to you to kind of open this up, then I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues and our city staff. Listen, we're going to be pulled in all different directions. As city staff, you're public works. You want everything, as you should, right? As you absolutely should. That is your job, right? Our CFO, he's going to say, okay, well, here's our budget challenges. And as legislators, we're going to have to find how to thread that needle. it's never been easy. When affordability is probably as precarious as ever, that's going to be challenging more than ever now. I think where this discussion is going to center on is what are we able to take on? Because I don't think it's nothing. I don't think that's anybody's thought. I could be wrong again, not putting words in people's mouths. But what are those critical projects that are mission critical, we need to move forward with, and how is the best mechanism to fund those? And while we may have differences in how to get there, I think that's what we want to talk through is if that is our kind of overarching goal, which listening to just people's even private comments or how we collectively talk in commission, I think that is where we're at, where it's perhaps not appetite for everything. What is mission critical and what are the proper funding mechanisms to get there? So let me turn it over to you, and then I'll give the floor over to everybody else.
Good morning, John Norris, Public Works Director. So a little bit of clarification. This list that we presented as part of the utility increase, we have gone over this list many, many times. We've extended it out. We've moved projects. Our neighborhood improvement projects, there are a few on here, but we have them throughout the city. The 2024 estimate for neighborhood improvement projects was close to $5 billion. So as you can see, this is not everything. We're not asking for the Cadillac. We are asking for what is critical or has been directed by commission in the past to do. So that's kind of where we are today. Some neighborhood improvement projects turned into critical needs projects because the neighborhoods didn't want them and those projects were stopped. So those are very critical projects to solve some flooding issues. But instead of raising the roads and replacing water and sewer and everything, we might be upgrading the stormwater system, installing a smaller pump station to get rid of the water. So I just wanted to clarify that this list is the result of months of our engineering team going through everything, not only making sure that it was a critical project to get done or was directed by commission to do, but that we could also get the work done in the time period, because that is a concern. You know, can we spend that money and get these projects constructed? We see the challenges with lane closures already throughout the city with the projects we have going on. So we're trying to balance all those different demands, make sure we can get the projects done in a timely manner, and that is what was presented at the last FERC meeting where there was a unanimous vote to move it on to full commission.
And colleagues, how would you like to move forward? Do you want to see what some of these top projects are? What direction do we want to collectively take this in? I know there's a PowerPoint. I bet there is, Jason. But where do we want to see? Do we want to see, what did the administration recommend previously? That there was about $700, $800 million in borrowing? I'm sorry, billion?
It was a little lower than that. It was about $650 billion, or million.
Yeah, if I may, the initial one, which is the standard way, through utility rates, was approximately a $1 billion total program, as we've spoken. The funds generate cash, so it's a partially pay-go structure. So using the revenue bond model, it was about $625 million in borrowing was needed. The rest would be generated by the fund itself through those utility rates. It would be a higher borrowing amount, which we'll get to. I think it's in the presentation a little bit when it comes to a geo structure, because the funds would generate less cash with only a minimal CPI increase. So I think to develop the same program, deliver the same program, we'd actually have to borrow $783 million on a geo perspective. So
and Jason or John, feel free to answer this, but that original proposed where it was $1 billion, $100 billion. $1 billion. Yeah. Yes, I'm getting my decimal places wrong. $1,625 million in borrowing. What back of the envelope rate increase did that lead to? Let's call it in year 3 and however else you show it, maybe year 10.
That was about, year 1 was about $15 for the average single-family home. Year 2 was about $15
per month.
Per month, yeah, I'm sorry. And then by year.
And is that the same for single families and condos, John? I think we had discussion.
No,
It was lesser, right, for
So
condos?
condos are challenging because a condo has a master meter, they're getting one bill for all of the condo owners, and they split that up, and it's paid through the HOA assessment usually. So we estimated that we took about 10 condo buildings throughout the city of all different sizes, like an 8-unit building and a 100-unit building. So we got a relatively good sampling. It was about 70%, if I remember correctly, which was around $11 a month increase per condo unit.
And without going year 2, year 3, tell me where that number would be, let's call it year 5.
I think 2000, I can have it, it's slide 9. 2031, I think you would estimate the single family would be about $1,000 per year, and $735 on a condo. So again, I think it matches kind of what John was saying.
Can you
Just
give
takes
that in a per month? I have my phone too, but it's what we pay you for.
I like annual amounts.
It's what, 80 and let's call it 50?
About $85 on a single family home.
So I have the amounts per year. First year will be $11.77 a month for a condo per month. Then $13.51 next year, $13.21 the next year.
Where do we get in year 5?
Year 5 would be $11.51, and year 6 it would drop down to $5.16 increase.
If I may, one important thing in the utility rate model was after 2031, it basically drops the CPI. So we move back to
Hold on.
CPIs.
I'm sorry. So for that $1 billion borrowing, in year 1, that would be an increase of $15 a month for a single-family home, $11 a month for a condo?
Yes, and it wasn't $1 billion in borrowing, it was 625 million.
Yeah.
Right.
Presentation.
Yeah. But in year 5, what are you saying about,
Year 5 would be the last significant increase of $11.51 for a condo, and $14 for a single-family residence, and then year 6 is where it drops down to a smaller increase closer to CPI.
sorry, the aggregate though, versus the delta from now? Right, you know what I'm saying, Jason?
No, so I'm sorry.
About $80 for a single-family home per month over that 6-year period. That's an approximate
Condo would be
number.
like 65?
Yes, something
Okay,
Yeah,
right
use
around
the
there.
70% rule.
okay.
That's over a 6-year period.
Through the chair, I understand you have a presentation that compares the two, correct?
Yes, I do.
Through the chair, I'd love to see that presentation.
And this is an annual amount, so.
PJ, if you could put the presentation up. I think, John, you probably have it on the laptop.
Joe, while you're queuing up the presentation, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
John and Jason, can you address if you've planned this as a 5-year amortization process to get us to just CPI increases? Are we able to bond out if we do it over, let's say, 7 or 8 years, so the increases are smaller year to year, but it's still a rate increase? Have you studied that model as well?
I think what you're asking is 2027 through 31 have above CPI combined utility rate increases. And if we're looking at something smoothing instead of 11%, 9.77, if it was something like 5 flat, we could look at that. It would just, we would have to cut some projects, delay some projects. But if that's the will of the committee and the commission to explore if they say, I'm going to give you a number or a percentage, I think that, and I'll look to Brian Mance if I'm off on this, is they could go back and model that and see how much total capacity is, and then we can kind of backfill what projects we can afford through that process. And I see Brian shaking his head that he could do that. So that's one way of attacking it. If you wanted to say, here's a comfortable percentage we have, or if you want to do 2.5, one or the other, if you want to explore water and sewer, but stormwater, a different model, there's a lot of options the commission could go down.
Yeah, I think, I think before we decide one way or the other, we do need to look at those additional kinds of models, because maybe there's a way to bifurcate the most critical projects and get them fully funded ASAP, and then have a slightly slower pace, a slightly slower pace to proceed with the things that aren't as mission critical.
Yes, I mean, even if it's just to say whatever the first 4 years are, 27, 28, 29, and 30, which is up there on the presentation there, which is about, I think, almost $500 million worth of work there. If they wanted to look at just that and say, what would that look from a utility rate structure, and kind of punt the other projects to have a discussion on different rate structure in 4 years, that's a different way of attacking it, absolutely.
So the current.
Yeah, I would like to see that before we make a final decision about how to proceed.
Okay, the current slide shows a breakdown between the first 4 years and the last 4 years. So that gives you the dollar amounts associated.
And if I can, just for clarification, the dollars that you're seeing here are based on a GEO bond debt financing. So that would be the amount of debt needed if we ran through a GEO bond model. A revenue bond model would be different and would be lower amounts. But this is from a GEO bond model perspective, which is the kind of where the discussion kind of went when we talked about the rate moratorium and Commissioner Suarez's and co-sponsored by Commissioner Fernandez. I believe this item to be sent here for discussion. And we discussed PAYGO wasn't really going to work. It was really going to be a revenue bond through utility rates, which is typical, or we wanted to go in a GEO bond structure.
But I would be careful to say that the ones in future years, FY 31 through 34, are less critical than FY 27 through 30. That's just where they are as far as scheduling with design and construction. As I said earlier, all of these projects have been vetted and put in a priority list based on their need.
Those are all the projects?
These are all the projects that are included in the debt financing.
This presentation was put out as a supplemental last night, so everyone at home also will have access to it online.
Yep.
This is the same slide, just split up into I'm sorry, this has all of the funding sources, shows the debt, the PAYGO, above ground money, and grant money. And this is broken down into the years.
And just as a note from the GEO bond perspective, it's a lot of the dollars are in the NIP. So I think of the $783 million, if you're going a GEO bond model, a little more than half of it are NIPs. About $346 million of it are non-NIPs. So they would be critical needs and other needs determined by Public Works. This is where I come in. So I was requested to look at what would this look like if this was modeled as a GEO bond. So after we got the information from the Public Works Department about what when they ran through their model, after able to cash finance part of some projects, designs, and things like that, what their annual debt financing needs are. And on page 163 of the overall agenda, there was just showing their annual needs of $43,181,94. So some big numbers. So we modeled, we had PFM here, and we have a representative from PFM if there are any questions for him, but they ran through a debt amortization schedule. If we did the whole 8-year program, the next slide will show 4, but if we ran this an 8-year model. So what I take you through here is in 27, we would do a declaration of intent to issue. I would probably issue that debt somewhere towards the end of 2028, so there would be no impact from a property tax millage perspective. In 29, we would actually have the first debt service, and we modeled this with 4 tranches of debt being issued, going in, and so it's 29, 31, 33, and 35. The reason I slid this slide up to 35, though most you see on 34, is 35 would be max debt service. And actually max debt service in either perspective. So it would climb from about $15 million for debt financing up to $52 million in 2035. And those are the 2 years I'm going to concentrate on. So the area that's a little light gray and bolded there is if we looked at what would the GEO bond millage need to be from this model if we had average growth. Over the past 20 years, the taxable base for the city of Miami Beach since 2007 has been 6.7%. I am aware that we just got our preliminary numbers at 3.5. It's been a little light. But the average, and this includes the Great Recession and a lot of negatives in there, it averages out at 6.7%. That's new construction plus existing values. So if we just extrapolate that out, we see that we would need about 0.2 mils the first year, and in 2035 max 0.5 mils. That model is based on two assumptions. The 6.7% increase in the taxable base of the city, which is around 60 billion now, increasing. And then also what I looked at was the median homesteaded property tax and the average homesteaded property tax. The median homesteaded property as of this last year was $306,000. So the median is the number I like to look at because that's 50% above and 50% of people are below that. So the middle is the average home, let's say. The average homesteaded property is taking all the values. So you're getting a real skewed in values from lower end properties up to $20, $30, $50 million properties. That's why you're seeing that disparate $904,000 in average. So if I took those median homesteaded properties and I put in the 3% cap by the state constitution that your taxable value can increase, I see that in 2035, that 306 would go to 387, and the average homesteaded would be up to about 1.1 million. So that would show that the median homesteaded property tax would be approximately $195 and $577. The box below it, or set of numbers, is I would call ultra worst case scenario in which there would be no growth. Which is not reasonable, but I wanted to show it from the higher end perspective. So if the properties did not increase in value and the city did not build one new thing and the city's values today are the same values in about 10 years. But that does show obviously a higher millage needed, 0.9 to support that same debt service in 2035. So that's a 276 and an 817, let's call it, from an average perspective. That would be as if we financed the entire 8 years exclusively as a GO bond. Next slide. These next two slides they're similar, but I wanted to show it. So this one I won't spend too much time. This is if you just said, I want a GO bond finance the next 4 years of the program. So same deal. I'm just going to go right out to 2035. We're at about 0.3 mils, $116, and then the average would be 343. Worst case, I'm projecting about 165 and 485. And then the last slide is I was able to get through the Office of Management Budget in coordination with the property tax appraiser what some averages and medians were on all residential. So as of right now, we are heavily residential. I think it's like 80% residential in the city. So this is going to mix both your homestead and your non-homestead. Interesting thing is they're not materially different when it comes to the median residential property of 341,000. And the median and the average at 884. So they're very similar. So just running this is just the 8-year model going all the way out. We're about 0.5 mil still, $289 and $748 from an average residential. And then next. And then next I'll let John take this, but what we did, the top part that's in the lighter shaded gray, white gray, is just taking those numbers from those earlier slides. This is the assumed average growth, assumes the 8-year model, and it just shows the median and average homesteaded and the median and average residential property, and then as compared to a single family home and a condominium type building and compared to an annual cost. But John, did you want to?
So Jason, it's just looking at this, it looks significantly less than if we were to use the GO bond with tax savings or savings on the millage swap. It's significantly less than the utility bill increase. Is that correct?
Yes, I think on the surface, when you do compare what a median or average homesteaded or residential property is, more than likely it would show it to be cheaper. Obviously,
Just simplistically, I mean, without tell me what's behind that? Like, tell me how there's cost savings. Keep it high level. Borrowing from a general obligation bond versus an enterprise fund.
Well, we've had this conversation, is that the standard way that, most, pretty much everyone.
I get that. How and why is it cheaper? Walk me through the structure of how it's cheaper
It's the concept that the higher value properties are paying more of it. So it would be the concept of, I'll say a pizza as a perspective. I go to Nick's on 2nd Street, I get a pizza for $20. Everyone who goes in pays $20. You bought a pizza, everyone pays it's the fair amount. Using let's say a geo bond tax perspective, the person who has the more expensive house might pay $40 for the pizza, I pay $20, and someone else paid $7 for the pizza. That's why you're kind of getting that skew. The median or homesteaded properties on the median side are lower, so are more higher cost or higher valued properties will be taking more of the hit. It's a tax shift. But one thing I want to...
This is the median, correct?
Yes.
The combined annual
Right.
utility bill increase for a single family. So that is also, that you don't have to have a median because that's everybody, correct?
The median is the 50% line.
No, but the last two rows.
The last two are what the utility...
It would be for everyone. It doesn't, there is no median.
Correct. Yeah, well, this is kind of the...
Based on usage.
Correct.
Right. But it's important to note that from a long-term financial resiliency perspective on how you fund utility projects, I do understand the concept of the Commission's having a philosophical debate on utility rates versus doing this versus property taxes. It is allowed to be done by property taxes. It is not typical, especially water and sewer. Stormwater is a little bit more. City of Miami did a $200 million Miami Forever bond to partially fund their stormwater. Just came to my attention that North Bay Village did a GEO very recently, and they're in the process of working their way through that. That was approved by their voters only for stormwater, but not water and sewer. And that's something the committee or the commission could explore. But from the long-term financial perspective, as you build these utility rates and it generates revenues, those revenues will be there going forward. So as you issue debt and then as you pay that off, there will be bounding capacity in the future to fund partially fund some next range of projects. If you do GEO bond, you get a slug of money, 4 years, 8 years, and then you're back at square one, no additional capacity. So I just wanted to, for the record, explain that I do understand that those numbers look that perspective, but at the end of the day, when we're looking multi-generational, the utility rate structure does help better from that perspective. And I think that's important. And I didn't know if maybe you wanted to bring up the financial advisor to talk a little bit about his experience.
I still don't understand,
Because
without using pizza. This is important stuff. Tell me how our residents pay less. If we fund it through a GEO bond or through a utility revenue bond.
through the chair, if I may. PJ, if you want to put this slide back up so we can all, so the two middle gray rows are the median. Meaning the median is, if you look at a sheet, an Excel sheet, literally the median is the middle row, and anything above is 50%, anything below is another 50%. So that is the median range of what people who have a value of $306,000, I believe.
Correct.
Jason? The bottom two rows is everyone. Everyone would pay, that's the cost that everyone would pay in the city of Miami Beach over the next 8 years. The two middle rows is the median. Now, someone who owns a property on North Bay Road is going to pay significantly more than, for example, in year 2035, more than $289. It'll be probably closer to, not 780. That'd be the average, the 748. But it'll be significantly more because their property is worth more and it's more commensurate with their property. So that's why you see a difference. It's the median. The median compared to, on the bottom two rows, everyone pays that.
Right, so you're going to have a lot of people above that paying
Correct.
that number. So it may look $290 on the median GeoBond for all residential, so that's low, but.
And my take on this and my perspective is that a lot of these neighborhood improvement projects is exactly what it is. It's a neighborhood improvement project, right? So it should be commensurate with your property taxes. because it's not, I don't believe it's just water and sewer, it's also landscaping, it's parking, it's aesthetics on the improvement project. It's not simply just a pipe in the ground. It involves a lot more. Like West Avenue, for example, is going to look beautiful after this. They're not simply going to just replace the pipes and put everything above ground back the way it is. It's going to enhance the value of the neighborhood, which really is commensurate with property taxes. So it's a philosophical, take. Some cities like to do it through everyone in the city pays the same thing to make that happen. My take is, I think it should be commensurate with how valuable your property is. So.
And Rick, walk me through the legal dynamics of how these would be issued. We would have to go for a voter referendum for a geo bond, but not a utility rate revenue bond?
That's correct.
And why is that?
Because the property tax increase requires the property owners or the residents to vote to tax themselves. A utility rate increase does not require consent in that way.
And one more thing through the chair. If, with my proposal, if we do the geo bond, what I would like to do is have a resolution, a policy, that every year, whatever the debt service increase is, we have to find cuts to make up for that. Therefore, there is no tax increase. So whatever you saw.
Can I jump in with a question?
Yeah,
let me just finish my
yeah.
train of thought, Commissioner Bott. So, just so that we're clear, whatever those increases were, I want them to negate out. So it doesn't matter if you have a home on North Bay Road or you have a small condo in Flamingo Park. Through the operating fund, we can find every year, I believe it was 15 million, Jason?
Yes, in our
And
discussion,
debt service.
15, but it would end up at
Yeah,
52
and
million.
so every year, through what I'm proposing, the city administration would literally have to come every year and say, this is what you would need to cut in order to offset the debt service that we would pay every year. So there would be no tax increases. And then what we're doing is we're prioritizing water, sewer, infrastructure over some luxuries that we may have to forego. And we'll have that decision every year to make.
Commissioner Bott.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of questions. One is, what happens if we have an emergency and we don't have funds in the budget, or we don't have access to money because, for example, the bond referendum doesn't pass? Are we precluded from finding resources? And at this notion that we're going to find, $650 million in budget savings to pay for our infrastructure needs that have been approved by this commission is a fallacy. I mean, I am all for trimming back the budget and looking responsibly at it, but we're facing a potential property tax cut. It may not be a total repeal, it may be a partial cut, and maybe it's nothing this year, but it's not going to go away. This is going to be an ongoing conversation. What happens to the maintenance costs? I mean, to me, this feels like you're getting transferring money from one credit card to another, but there's no money there. So I very much like this idea of the more valuable your property is, the more valuable, the more you pay for the upgrades. I think that's a perfectly plausible way to proceed. I think it's hard to make this decision at this meeting without having seen the other options of bifurcating critical needs of water and sewer versus some smaller projects. I will also say that I've gotten a number of emails from residents who have said, this is not an enormous issue for the entire city, but my street, my house floods twice a summer. And I've had to replace my floor 4 times in 6 years since I've lived here, or whatever the statistics are. So I'm really concerned that, if this doesn't pass at referendum, what do we do then? we're back to where we were. We've lost another year, and the costs have crept up, and we've had more flooding. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, Jason, about how we can deal with emergency? And I will say that I'm not really psyched about the idea of tying our hands prospectively about how we manage our city's resources in terms of what we're able to do. I mean, we're elected to make challenging decisions when we're faced with challenging circumstances, and I don't want this year's budget austerity flavor to color what we are permitted to do going forward as the needs change. I think that's dangerous and it's a bad precedent. That's why I'm so distressed about the moratorium that was passed, because it handcuffs us instead of giving us the opportunity to talk about how to fund things.
Mr. Salinas.
Sure. Well, Jason, do you want to answer that real quick? I don't mind. And then, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I think, I mean, before Jason goes on, I think that's the, I think.
I did actually want to hear from our CFO, if that's okay.
Yeah, look, I'm sure.
There's a couple of questions in there. I'll try to answer them best of my ability. If I miss one, Commissioner, please remind me at the end. So a couple of things. Emergencies. The water sewer stormwater does have reserves. So if something exploded tomorrow, we could probably have some dollars to address that. There's also general fund reserves that can be deployed quickly if this is obviously a big emergency and we end up with a million-gallon sewer issue, and John says that, we need $25 million tomorrow. So in an emergency perspective, we could cover that, but we would need to backfill that money, obviously. I think the other item about...
And Jason, I'm sorry to interrupt, and perhaps the city attorney can correct this. I believe that the moratorium also has an exception in the event of an emergency, that moratorium is lifted.
Correct. That is correct, yes.
Correct. So just like we had in Fort Lauderdale a number of years ago, when they had I think a several hundred million gallon issue, they had to do an emergency $250 million bond issuance with immediate utility rate increases. That's obviously on the table even with the moratorium. So I think, one of the questions was, what happens if this goes forward, the GEO bond, whether it's the whole program, part of the program, the stormwater portion perhaps, with the utility rates on the water and sewer, and it fails on the GEO bond side, I think it is back to square one and what the commission wants to do on funding these projects. So utility rates could be obviously back on the table, or wait a year for another smaller, different type of GEO bond question. One other point of clarification on the NIPs, the neighborhood improvement projects, it is already partially funded. It's 10%. But it is partially funded with property taxes, some through a previous GEO bond, and some have been funded, like West Avenue was funded with PAYGO dollars, I think, last year. So there are elements of property tax support when it comes to the big NIPs. I don't know if, Commissioner, I did answer all of your questions, because there were a couple in there.
One other, yes, sort of. One other question, which has just escaped me. I don't remember. I'll chime in a minute. But I don't want us to be the poster children of how not to handle things. We've talked about this for a number of months now, and every time we do, Fort Lauderdale is raised as, look what they had to deal with. It was a disaster. We're supposed to be the model of resilience and proactive thinking and wise urban planning stewardship, and we know we have issues. So I really think it's, without seeing this idea of bifurcating, prioritizing the needs, the immediate needs now with a much smaller rate increase, and then perhaps bonding out the smaller projects that can be spread out over a little bit more time is maybe the best possible solution going forward that covers everybody's goals. And I mean, we are completely united in getting this stuff done. There's no question about that. But this notion of how do we do it with the least pain possible? The longer we delay, the more expensive it gets, and the more people are dealing with flooding situations, and nobody wants that. And my colleagues and I may have different views on how to move forward, and I respect everybody's point of view. I think we are, and I want the public to know this, that we are absolutely mission-driven to get these projects fixed and resolved. And the next decade it's going to take a decade to get them all addressed if we're lucky. So we're all very eager to get this going. We just are trying to figure out the best way to move forward so it doesn't seem punitive.
Jason, can we use enterprise funds to help supplement any of this? Enterprise funds?
Well, yes, that's what I was mentioning. Whether it's a geo bond or a revenue bond through the enterprise funds, the program will be partially cash funded by the funds itself. So that's why I mentioned that the approximate $1 billion capital program over this, I believe, 8-year window, if you go the geo bond model, we would be issuing $783 million. If you went the revenue bond model, it would be about $625 million. So that means, $375 million would be cash funded with these utility rate increases if we move forward with them. So it would put a less of a debt burden on ratepayers.
Okay, well, you
Jason,
stated that a
I
little bit too
remember-
fast, and I also would like to see that. Can I look at in this packet where that is reflected?
I'm sorry, the totals?
Yeah, everything that you just said, is that a part of our packet?
It is, and I believe in the first slide of the PowerPoint presentation is where it mentions the $783 million. It's also in the memo. I'm referencing, since we've moved, this particular item was more geared towards property taxes. I was referencing back to the April 1st FERC, I think the last time it was here, the Water and Sewer Rate Ordinance, April 1st, 2026 FERC memo, where the model was presented on the utility rate increases, which is where the $15 a month, I think in first year impact was mentioned by our Public Works Director. But in that detail on one of the pages, it does break down the cash versus the financing perspective. And in that memo, if you add up the water, sewer, and the stormwater, it's about $625 million worth of debt financing needs.
And then, so I guess to address, so I feel like doing a geo bond is the best way to go here. And, I'm still a little confused on the details, like Commissioner Magazine. I guess my only hesitation now is that I'm just hearing that Commissioner Suarez wants to make sure that the administration can reduce the budget side to offset the tax, which sounds great. I mean, it really does sound great on paper, but then we are going to be hurting somewhere else. And I'm worried about where that other pain point will be. So that is worrisome to me.
Yeah, and that's a valid concern, Commissioner Mateo Salinas, but I think, personally, our job as local elected officials is to prioritize our funding for the basic tenets of government, which is public safety, sanitation, and infrastructure. So I think what this does is it really makes us put our thinking caps on and prioritize what is most important in government, right? And doing the water rate increase, that's the easy way out, right? That's just the easy button. You push it, hey, we're taxing everyone, and there's nothing on our side that we do to help ease the burden of affordability, especially in Miami Beach. So what this does is it forces us to have that conversation every year. And I think that's good. I think that's a great thing to do as part of our job. I believe that if we go through this route, it will address the same thing. It will address the same projects that the water rate hike would have addressed, right? Except for, in what my opinion is, it's more fairly approached to who pays what, right?
So let me ask though, to clarify, but if we were to adopt this, your suggestion, and then we ask the administration to show us cuts, would we have the option to then not fully cut? Because
Yeah, no, it's every year. It's up to us. It's illegal to tie our hands to do that. But-
okay, because I would be concerned that we say, let's cut over here, and then we're facing, cutting some of our art and culture stuff or stuff that I know might seem like a luxury, but it's also a part a huge part of our brand and who we are, and we, you know, we're all very proud of, you know, so I just don't want to, you know, tie our hands to saying something like, you know, we have to cut something that we shouldn't cut, you know, so I want to know more about this.
Well, from what I can understand, and the city attorney and Jason can also, it's every year we would have to have that conversation. We're not necessarily bound to it, although I certainly would like to be, because I'm a fan of prioritizing our funds for what I believe is what's most important. And that's just me. I know to many others, arts and culture is very important, and it is to Miami Beach. But at the same time, I think, you know, maybe the next 4 years, the one priority overweighs the other, and that's what we have to come to a decision every year.
So if I can just add on to that. So as you know, the administration has been, is directed to deliver a rolled back rate budget for discussion this summer. And our initial estimates are around 17 million, $18 million, let's say. And we're still getting this refined. We won't know definitively till we get the certified values, right? So let's just say we're going to deliver, you know, 15, 16, $17 million in cuts for the commission to determine whether they want to move forward on. You know, then we have the ballot question that's going to be on for property tax reform, which our early estimates are in the $15, $16 million impact. So what's interesting is that when you go through this budget cycle, you'll see what the property tax, the new homestead exemption increases would look like as they get impacted in the future. So if that passes, the commission's going to have some interesting things to do. It may be difficult to do both if the property tax reform goes through and it ends up being a $16 million cut, to also afford another $15 million in 2029. But just as a reminder, I think, getting Commissioner, to your point, that $15 million 2 years later becomes $30 million, 2 years later becomes $40 million, 2 years later becomes $51.8 million.
And here's the other part of that. Hold on. If we pass this through being funded out of GO bonds and this ballot question passes, in addition to the budgetary constraints that we're facing, we're essentially then going to be removing a large swath of payers into these utility and infrastructure projects.
And there's two very interesting points there. One is, if this decides, or some portion of it, whatever it is, goes out and the voters vote on it, they voted, and we have to legally, we cannot state that we cannot advocate for it, and we cannot legally, as the commissioner said, we had a discussion with the city attorney, you cannot tie the hands of a future commissioner. So you can't say, go ahead and vote for this because I'm going to cut your taxes later and you're not going to pay anything. We can't state that. You can make a statement about there being a goal, and we'll have a discussion every year, but there's no promise to that. At the end of the day, the voters, which I am, I will have to look at it from the perspective, do I want to buy this and pay that tax, you know, as it were. And I think that's
Jason,
really,
I have a couple of questions.
Yep.
Sorry, guys, it's really loud here, I apologize, and thank you for your patience with me. Jason, if there's a property tax rollback, how does the GO bond work if it's predicated upon property taxes? Does that change how the mechanics of a GO bond?
Not really. The rollback rate would have no effect. It's its own separate millage. Once the commission approves it, it goes to the voters approve it, and I go ahead and issue that debt. The determined millage needed to cover that service is done by one of my offices, the budget office. We'll say this is the needed millage. The commission approves it, but doesn't really have a say. This is the millage we need to cover that. Now, talk about the homestead exemption change. It will continue to shift that more from homestead into non-homestead residential, and commercial will pick up even more of a burden. So this is going into the fairness question, really, at the end of the day. Is you know, from the utility rate, you know, it's the pizza.
Not just commercial, but renters.
Renters would be in the residential, right, and they would be in the non-homestead. But there is an interesting point, which a lot of people haven't talked about, is moving that from a 10 to a 5% increase. So they're closer to a homesteaded increase. So there will be some impacts there, but there is still a shift. Everyone would be paying more from that perspective. So it's difficult to model what that number would be. The utility rates, you know, as we talked about, everyone pays the same. And again, I haven't seen really and I discussed with the team, water and sewer really being done as a geo. We have seen.
Yeah, so
some
let
stormwater.
me pull back, and this is where I'm heading with things, right? And we can have our consultant, or, yeah?
I'm sorry, Brian Mance from GovRates. I just-
Hold on, not handing it over to you yet. Yeah, but you're our financial
Sorry.
consultant, advisor, or?
He's the rate consultant.
Okay, so here's where I think we should go with things, and this isn't because I have like some dog in the fight or I'm dogmatic about how to do things. It is just good governance, right? How municipal financing 101 is done, right? I've looked at more municipal budgets than 99.95% of human beings on this earth, right? I literally made a career acting as somebody that only made money if I was smarter than Moody's and S&P and found inefficiencies in how they rated things and where those bonds were trading, right? And did well at that. So I know a lot about how these government financings and projects work. It is just, and I can sit up here and if people want to talk about the academic reasons, and they're numerous, why these types of projects are overwhelmingly, if not entirely, funded through revenue bonds, right? And it's not like, it's not my personal preference, right? I don't care. But if you're going to move me from that, I need to know why. So I don't think the feedback that we've gotten, our residents want an increase to the extent that our administration had proposed. So where I'm looking to steer things is coming in at a lesser amount, right? If those numbers said, well, if we do $625 million of borrowing, year one, that'll be a $15 a month increase. For single-family homes, $11. Well, if that's too much, then we need to see what is more digestible, right? And John, I talked to you this morning, and I don't expect you to have this ready, but if that's linear, if we would say, well, you know what if we borrow a third of that, right, through utility revenue bonds? That would equate to a $5 a month increase and $3 a month increase. And then if we wanted to take it upon ourselves and make those offsetting adjustments in our general fund, that is good governance, right? Funding $625 million or $1 billion of utility, stormwater, wastewater, and infrastructure through our general fund puts our general fund at risk, especially when there's going to be a lot of philosophical debate over what happens to the pricing, the market pricing of general obligation bonds in Florida if homestead property exemptions are out. We could think about the timing of this. What a bond is, okay? We'll step back to 101, is investors out there, yes, it's through Wall Street banks, but it's made up of individual people, right? Municipal bonds are held through retail, through everyday mom and pops in their retirement accounts. Florida is going to take a step possibly that nowhere else is done and essentially say your general bonds, general obligation bonds going forward no longer have homestead property taxes to rely on. And what general obligation bonds are, they're called ad valorem tax revenue. That means we promise to pay you back and we can tax as much as we can to fund those projects, right? And that is why you're able to borrow at a cheap rate. If the voters vote to remove homesteaded property taxes from being accessible to geo bonds, the market's going to say, well, we're really not sure what's going on here. And we're going to go to market when there's a tremendous deal of uncertainty. I don't think that's good governance, right? So I want to get to the same place as my colleagues about not passing these significant increases onto the taxpayers or our residents. I just think, and I have to be moved off it if we're going to go a different direction, why we're trying to recreate or reinvent the wheel of Municipal Finance 101. These are the epitome of projects that are to be funded out of utility rates, right? It actually protects our city, it protects our taxpayers. So we're not just passing that ad valorem possibility taxing onto our general fund. And I think we've all collectively heard, or at least I and the ones that voted for the moratorium, our residents don't have the appetite for all of that. So let's scale that back. Instead of $625 million, let's just do, we could have that debate. Maybe it's $200 million of the most critical. And that would be year one increase of $5 per month at a maximum, and actually $3 for condos. And if we want to go and find that offsetting amount in our general fund each year, I support that, right? I'm fiscally conservative. I want to find that offsetting dollar. It's just the mechanics it's just municipal government 101 about how to fund these. Our consultant, I haven't spoken to you except for 30 seconds earlier today, so not like we couldn't. If I'm off here, tell me.
Through the chair, one caveat is, because I think what you're saying is we shouldn't use the full amount, right?
Yeah.
And two things. How many NIPs, John, is this? It's West Avenue, South of Fifth, North Shore D, couple critical infrastructure projects in Flamingo, and a couple other critical infrastructure projects. I believe there's 42 out of 56.
There are, no, 42 projects, but that is not all NIPs. There's only 5 NIPs in this plan.
But the
rest are
NIPs are
critical
the
needs.
bulk of the.
I wouldn't say the bulk, but they're a significant portion of that, but there are only 5 of the 42 projects. So.
Right, there are 5 of 42 projects. So, Commissioner Magazine, the issue is that I foresee we almost make it political if we bifurcate and cherry pick what projects get done. So
Well, we're politicians.
I understand that, but if it's going to go to a GEO bond, the voters have to vote on it. And if you're only, just hypothetically, let's say we only do South of Fifth and West Avenue, what does Mid Beach get out of this? What does North Beach get out of this? Why would I vote for that if it's not in my neighborhood? And that is, because ultimately this goes to referendum, people have to vote on it. And if there's really nothing in my neighborhood that I'm going to benefit from, why would a resident vote for it? As opposed to, we just throwing on the tax. That's the curveball here, is that it's going to have to be voted on by the majority of the city.
Well, what I'll say is if we do what we've always done, and what is
always done?
Is funding these through utility revenue bonds, right? The enterprise funds. We vote on that. And if we, just like we were going to do, and if we don't have the appetite, which I don't, for such a large amount and passing on those rate increases, then we vote on a lesser amount. And we can reverse engineer into that, right? We don't have to, well, we could do either. We could pick the most critical projects, or we could say, well, you know what? We're going to issue a $200 million bond. So go out and find the projects that are most in need of $200 million, right?
Yeah, but again, the people, if it's through a bond and it's a referendum,
Yeah, so,
it has to be voted on.
A revenue bond isn't through a referendum. And Rick, right?
No, correct.
Oh, I thought you meant GeoBond.
Yeah. So my argument is whether we were raising $1 or $1 billion for infrastructure like this, our water, wastewater, neighborhood improvements, it is just good governance to do so through revenue bonds.
Can I just, sorry.
Yep. And we can have, is that your area of expertise? Are you good at that? Maybe you could explain that more elementary than I. But that is the way 95% of municipalities fund their projects. And it's because there's a multitude of issues. One, I think we borrowed at a cheaper level. And Jason, you alluded to that, where it actually costs us less. We're able to go out to market quicker.
So, Mr. Chair.
Well, it is good governance, like, it doesn't put your general fund at risk. Let's say these projects run over, there's more transparency, it just doesn't get commingled into this large billion-dollar budget, right? It is just the way government is done, and happy to have that philosophical argument. So then it comes, well, if we don't want to pass on any increases, which we can have that philosophical debate as well, then we go, well, if we're going to do a $200 million bond over 30 years, how much then should we be looking to offset out of our budget? And that is through the general fund, right? And we can do that every single budget year where we go, well, if we passed on $5 per month of increased borrowing to our ratepayers, how do we save them that out of the general fund? And I'm happy to champion that issue with you.
Another thing
Can I
is.
just add something really
And
quick to what you
if
said?
if I may, to the chair.
Hold on, Commissioner Salinas, Bott, Suarez.
I just wanted to add that I actually disagree with you, Commissioner Suarez. I don't think someone would not vote for this because it doesn't affect their neighborhood, because it will eventually affect their neighborhood. It's over the course of time, and so they're just going to be in that queue. But I think our neighbors, want to help out their neighbors and Miami Beach as a whole, and then it will end up funding, a lot of projects over the course of what we have, a 4-year and an 8-year in front of us. But what we need to do is we need to tell folks that this is something that's going to benefit everyone. People all over Miami Beach go into different neighborhoods to dine or to, do whatever they want to do. And so it's going to be good for all of us if we were to support this. So I understand your concerns on that, because there has been, pushback from certain neighborhoods, but I just don't think that, people will not want to help their neighbor for the good of Miami Beach, my opinion.
Yeah, and what I also wanted to mention was, Commissioner Magazzini said, or you were alluding to, maybe we just do a partial. But the problem with that is, the longer we wait, the more the other projects are going to cost. In 5 years, they could be double, right? So I don't want to kick the can down the road. I'd rather just deal with it now for the next 8-10 year plan. And so that in the next 4 years, it's not 50% more, it's not 100% more. We've already got the money and we're already addressing it. I think if we're going to do this, I think we should do this now. It'll be generational, and it's going to certainly cost the average person on Miami Beach a lot less through the operating fund, GEO bond, than a water rate utility. I mean, it was pretty clear from staff's slide that it's significantly different. So, and I think it's more fair. I think it's more fair that we're asking people with more expensive properties to pay more for this sort of infrastructure, as opposed to a regressive tax where everyone struggling set income residents have to cost to bear, such as our seniors and our fixed income. So.
Through the chair, I think I was supposed to have been next, so I'm going to jump in if I may. A couple of questions. Jason, the bonds contemplate construction. They don't contemplate maintenance and repair, minor normal course of life of project repair. Is that correct? It's just building it. And I have a couple of other questions, so please let me just get this going. Is that correct? It's just the build, it's not the ongoing maintenance? Can you
Yes, this
confirm or
would not
clarify?
materially impact operations and maintenance the way water, sewer, and stormwater projects work.
Okay, perfect. So one of the things that I heard in conversation was this notion of, we're going to pit neighborhoods against each other because who would possibly vote for something that doesn't benefit them immediately, directly in front of their house? Well, we're a 7-mile sandbar in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. I think we're all impacted. And so I reject that notion, and I think that is only something that gets stirred up by a false narrative. I think we're all very cognizant that if you are working in South Beach and you live in North Beach and Mid Beach is flooded, you're affected, right? So, I think that is something we need to keep an eye on, make sure that we are measured in our words when we talk to our constituents about why this matters, even if your particular home doesn't flood. I mean, I lived in Bay Shore, which has historic flooding and has for decades. My house never flooded. I was there in a 1926 house for 13 years, and I loved it, and it never flooded once. I would vote for this 10 times over because I know that my neighbors 2 blocks down the street flooded all the time. So I just want to put that on the record. I want to make sure that that is heard loud and clear. The other thing that I keep hearing about, we're going to just find the money for these in our existing budget. You know, I appreciate that we all have different priorities, but you know, we've just turned the ship of state on this city. We are being viewed globally as the epicenter of arts and culture and fitness and finance. And why would we undo the work that's taken us a decade? We are seeing historic activations and people trying to have events here. We have to beat them away with a stick. Not literally, don't, you know, for anybody listening, nobody's advocating violence, but I'm saying, you know, we're having to say thank you, but no thank you. We are full right now. So why would we undo that? And I know that it's not everybody's priority. I get that loud and clear, but every dollar invested in arts and culture generates $5 in return. And that is a basic fundamental ROI math equation that is indisputable. And when we are looking at all the other tax cuts that we do not have control over, whether they come this year at all or partially or fully or in 5 years, you know, we need to insulate ourselves from what happens at the state level. We must make sure that we have revenue coming into this city from other sources and attracting businesses and new families moving in who are starting you know, moving their headquarters down here. All those things, it's additive. Jason, can you give me a ballpark? And I don't mean to give you a pop quiz, but can you give me a ballpark on a couple things? How much money we spend on arts and culture every year, how much money we spend on Parks and Rec every year, and how much money we spend on Alba's
I don't want to conflate
department.
I don't want to conflate these two.
I would like to just.
This isn't like.
No, but. No, but Joe, if you let me finish, please, because this notion of we're going to.
This isn't a linked analysis, right? Commissioner Suarez's proposal isn't even, and I don't even want to spend too much time talking.
But the issue is that we keep hearing that we're going to find the savings from other places because we're going to prioritize things differently.
Right, but that is a totally different item. Totally different.
But we're not going to generate. We're not going to generate $650 million to pay for these items.
Then we address that at that item, right?
But it's a false narrative that's being put out as part of this narrative, and I would like to just address if we're going to find this.
Commissioner Bott, I want everyone to know, I'm not trying to do a false narrative. I'm not simply saying we're going to defund arts and culture to pay for this. No, not at all. I think we have a $1 billion budget. There's only 83,000 residents in Miami Beach. I think we can certainly find efficiencies in our government through perhaps AI.
And let's keep it at that. I didn't have her, you know, I stopped her from going into where those cost savings would come from.
But I just want to make it clear that I'm not advocating for cuts to arts and culture.
I mean, it's going to have to come from somewhere, right? Like but that's not the discussion to have today. That's the discussion that's out there in the stratosphere. That, okay, if we're not going to pass on any type of cost increase, it'll come from somewhere, but those are two different debates, right?
But I don't think they are. I think they're linked, because that's what we're hearing. And so I'm trying to figure out, where are we going to come up with $650 million from our budget?
But it's not $650 million, Commissioner, it's $15 million.
But I'm literally in the middle of a sentence. And so, okay, it's $15 million this year, and next year it's $30 million, and the year after it's a bunch more. And so the question is, with all the other stuff going on, you know, are we making decisions on false? And look, I could be wrong. Maybe we only spend a total of $7 million on Parks and Rec and Alba's department and arts and culture, and then you know what? Then we have that discussion. But I'm just saying, I'm not slamming anybody. I want this to be a conversation. I'm not pointing fingers and accusing. I'm saying I don't think, even if we were super austere and cut everything, we wouldn't find the money that we needed to fund what we know we need to keep our island literally and figuratively afloat. And then there's the sort of subjective conversation about what do we put out into the world? And, do we put a full stop on the things that people come here for? And that's a conversation. That's a very different conversation. I just want to get to the numbers of what it would be if we rolled all that stuff up and said, you know what, we're
If I could
dispensing
through the
with this.
chair, because I have a question on that. If I could through the chair.
Go ahead.
And so Commissioner Suarez's proposal, if I understand, was on a yearly basis, the commission would determine at its discretion, it would be its prerogative every year to figure out whether from the general fund it can and it will subsidize or shift funding to, I guess, cushion the impact of the bond on the residents. Would that be a proper explanation of it to the attorney or the CFO?
Yes, I think that's the commissioner's concept, and I think as he had mentioned.
And so then it would be every year on the commission's discretion and the commission's prerogative based on available funding and based on the priorities. But it's not necessarily set on stone. It doesn't become the policy. From what I'm hearing from the commissioner, he's thinking of something that could almost be the word is escaping me
aspirational,
now, but aspirational, exactly. Aspirational. I think what's important here is a distinction of the approach that we're taking. The first approach through a rate increase to do revenue bonds, we were potentially imposing a significant yearly rate increase on our residents, us imposing it on people who may or may not be able to afford it, as opposed to going out to our residents and asking them, hey, these are the needs of the community. Do you want to buy into this? Do you want to impose this on yourselves? Because you see that the critical nature and the importance of it. And if the community then says, yes, we want to take on this obligation because we see this priority, then in the future, the commissions, depending on the economy, depending on the tax landscape and the policies that are passed, can then determine, okay, on a yearly basis, we'll determine whether we shift dollars or not. But the very basic question is, are the residents willing to take this upon themselves? And then it's up to the commission's prerogative afterwards, if the numbers work out, whether they do that shift to cushion the impact on the residents.
If I may add.
And it becomes purely aspirational.
If I may add, just to kind of put two things together here, is there are two different discussions, right? There's, are we going to do the projects? Is it going to be revenue bonds? Is it going to be a geo bond? And then did we want to have a, that aspirational goal every year to offset that? And I know the chair had meant, because I think there's also two different perspectives, and I think the chair had mentioned that you could have that goal to also lower, whether it is a revenue bond or not, is to have that that discussion with the administration, say how much is the increase in the the offset because of the revenue bond or the geo bond, and lower that. So whether, there's two ways of attacking that same goal, is whether it's a geo bond millage that you would offset and lower operating expenses to cover that, or it's on the enterprise fund and you're paying it through there and saying, what's that impact? And I think that's, Chair, I think that was a discussion that you had earlier.
I just feel we're elected to make decisions. We don't go out to our voters to ask, should we fund the police? We don't go out to our voters to say, should we fund the parks? That's what we're elected to do. This is part of that, right? So we say, what do we feel as if that appropriate number is? If it's all of it, then we do all of it. If it's none of it, we do none of it. If it's part of the way there, we do part of the way there. I would like somebody to come up and tell me if I'm wrong. And I am open to being wrong, but I would like somebody to raise their hand and say, I'm the expert in the room, and talk about, here's the benefits and here's the drawbacks of funding either through a revenue bond or a geo bond? Who
And
is
and
that-
if I can build
Hold
on that, Joe.
Please, hold on. Who is that expert in the room? Okay, because if I'm wrong, then I will fall into place and say, you know what, we should do a geo bond. But I also want all of us to take this seriously, right? For me, I'm not dogmatic. I don't need credit. I actually don't like this. I'd rather take a vote and not have a bond hang over our head for the next 5 months, right? So for me, it's not about, I'm not like, oh, this is Joe Revenue Bond Magazine. Like, to me, it's just about what is the best way to do good government. What is the best way? And if I'm wrong, tell me I am wrong, and I will gladly shift, right? I'm just coming down on that side of, I think is more appropriate for a revenue bond, because that's my understanding. Not because I have a dog in the fight, or that's my personal preference, or that's my middle name. It's just how I've been brought up to understand good government is done. If it's better to do a geo bond, then tell me those reasons, and I will fall in line. But let's start with that. What is the best way to fund these types of projects? And I know you're the expert in the room because you raise your hand, but I don't know your name, so tell us who you are and tell us why you're the expert we should listen to.
Sure. So good afternoon. My name is Pete Verona, and I'm with PFM. So PFM is the financial advisor to the city. So this is what we specialize in, is doing these municipal bonds day in, day out. We do a lot of utility bonds, and that is the typical method that municipalities use to issue these projects. And I think there's probably two major reasons for that. One is the way that they are paid. You know, it's a user fee. You pay for how much you use. That's a typical thing that is done for utilities, and I think that's probably viewed as a fair way of doing things, is you pay for what you use. The second major thing is I do think that these utility projects that we discuss are so critical that they have to be done, essentially, one way or another. There's not really a choice. A lot of times these projects, if they're not done, then you go into a state of disrepair and things just compound and get worse. So you typically wouldn't go to the voters to ask that question because, and this is a hypothetical, what happens if that vote fails? Then you're back to square one where you're going to be probably raising utility rates anyway. So one way or another, the project almost demands to be done. So I think that a lot of municipalities, and probably the reason why these are done 99% utility revenue bonds, is because you all as the commission have the ability to raise those rates based on your discretion. And the question doesn't go to voters, where it then becomes a risk. Do these projects get approved?
If I could add on to that, I mean, I could.
Let me chime in also before it gets lost in confusion, because I have a couple thoughts. You're absolutely right. I mean, they have to get done, right? It's how do we pay for them? That's, at the end of the day, that I believe that's a policy decision. That's why we're having this discussion. How do we get to the goal of funding them? We certainly can just vote and say, you know what, we're going to double everyone's rates in the next 5 years, and we're really sorry if you're on a fixed income or you're a senior and you can't afford it, but you're out of here. Or we could do it the more fair way, where it's commensurate with your property. And that's, in my opinion, in Miami Beach specifically, I think a much more fair way to fund this. We're going to fund it either way. And sure, if it doesn't pass in November, if my colleagues can sign on and go to the voters for this, then we're right, we're back to square one, but at least we gave the voters an opportunity to buy into it instead of forcing it down their throats. So I believe we just passed a moratorium. It's going to take a 5/7 vote. I don't think there's going to be enough votes for that. So at this current state, where we're going to be able to fund that project through a water rate hike. So this is one avenue.
Through the chair, if I may.
If I could just jump in, because one of the things I also think about this is that in Miami Beach, I think these infrastructure projects tie directly to the value of your property. They increase the value of property in Miami Beach. It's not just something that benefits a user in the traditional way that, you know, with rates that the user pays a rate for the service that they're getting. I think, you could have properties that sit empty. We have commercial properties that sit empty in our city that could benefit from infrastructure projects, yet they're not contributing a single dollar towards it because they're not using the utility. Yet their property value is going to go up by the improvement to their neighborhood. Why wouldn't they be contributing towards a significant project that's going to increase their property values? And that's one of the level and playing fields that I see with this going the general obligation route. Is that the burden doesn't fall completely on the user, and it spreads it out, I believe, more fairly and evenly on different valued properties, where they will now be contributing towards projects that will continue to increase their own property values.
If I can.
Through the chair, if I may, I just wanted to jump in, Joe, on what you were saying, because I agree with you. And I would actually like, in addition to the expert in the room who answered the question that you had, I would like the city to come back next month. And I don't think we are ready to vote on this right now, and certainly not at the commission. And I think it needs to be hashed out further. I would like the city to come back and say, okay, here are the 6 things that need to be done immediately, because we have grants and other sources of funding that are at risk if we don't start the project within 18 months. I need to understand that, because that is, nobody's talked about that. We have, I know I can't speak for all the projects, but I know in North Shore D, and I think West Avenue has funding that is attached to it that is not through the city, but that might be jeopardized if this doesn't go forward in a timely manner. And I want to understand what's at risk if we don't move forward, and what if the voters do not choose to tax themselves for increased infrastructure. That's number one I want to see from the city. And number two, what I want to see from the city is I want to understand what our most urgent projects are, because they are, whether it's it's got funding attached to it that is at risk, or because we have a history of major failures there, or it's at risk of major failure, or whatever it is. Like, you come back to us and say, in the ideal world, we would push play on these, let's say 5 projects or 10 projects, and then back out what would it take to do a rate increase to cover just those, and then we could do everything else through a bond question. Or what would it take to fund those immediately and then spread out the additional cost for the rest of those things over 7 years instead of 5 years? I want options. I'm not seeing options now. Nobody wants to make this hard for everybody. But the fact of the matter is that the commission for the last 30 freaking years kicked this can down the road. They didn't even have CPI increases, which is a dereliction of duty. It is an abrogation of fiduciary duty, and that is really important.
Okay,
so
Tanya,
I really want to understand what our options are.
Okay, so here's where I can come down. Right? We have a handful of projects that we have significant funding for, are at the 1 yard line. I mean, we've talked about First Street for years. Okay, we're at the 1 yard line on that. We have funding we're going to lose. We need to do that ASAP, right? We have tractor trailers out on West Avenue ready to start that, and we need $7 million, right? So I want the city administration to come back and say, here's the projects that are literally at the 1 yard line that the residents have been working on for years, and these need to go forward. And then I will bring it to a vote. I know we have the moratorium in place. Bring it to a vote for our colleagues. These 3 to 4 projects, let's call it total 100 or $150 million. We can vote to issue revenue bonds for those. That would be $5 per month. And I am happy to support a resolution that would say, and here's the offsetting savings in our general fund if we want to essentially keep expenses flat. And then for the more projects that are critical but not at the 1 yard line that we need to do right now with expediency, if we want to put that out to the voters, I don't agree wholeheartedly with that, and I'd like to drill down with our expert more about how we get there, but we can further that discussion, and if it's the will of the body to throw the bulk of that remaining $600 million to the voters for your GO bond, I think we do so. But we can't sit up here and say, you know what, we're not going to take a vote to do First Street. We have promised that project, and it is at the 1 yard line, and we're going to lose funding if we don't do that, right? We have the bulldozers and the plans, and we've paid tens of millions of dollars in design, and we only need another $5 million for West Avenue, right? So we could vote to move forward with those projects literally today and issue bonds that'll only cost the average resident $5 a month and the average condo dweller $3 per month. And if we want to say, you know what, let's find that cost savings every single year in our general fund, let's do that. And then for the rest of these projects, we can put that out to the voters. I think that's compromising, and I would begrudgingly move forward with something like that.
Mr. Chair, but I hear you. But don't you think that's why we're in this predicament in the first place, is because the commission over the years have been cherry picking what to fund, what to raise to fund a certain project over the years? And by the way, I'm certainly against delaying this, because I think by September 5th, that's the deadline that we need to submit for a referendum question. We can't wait. We're going to have to take a vote today.
Through the chair, it's July 24th.
Oh, July 24th. So it's even more of a, right, because we have to go through our own internal procedures. So I don't think there's any appetite, at least for me, to wait another month. We can't, if we want to make this happen this year, correct?
The commission would need to have 2 hearings in order to issue a GO bond.
Correct.
So that would have to be June and July.
Yeah. So we have to move this forward today. Now, the details of what we fund obviously can happen between first and second reading. But, I think the reason why we're here today is because every commission in years past, not us, not blaming us, is that there's a critical needs project and we raise it just for that project. I don't want to ever have to visit this again, at least in the next 10 years. And it's going to get, like I said, it's going to get funded. It's either going to get funded through a GO bond, or we're going to have to tell the residents, listen, you guys, you didn't want to do this. We have critical need infrastructures that we have to fund. We're going to have to either do it through a water rate and surpass the 5/7 vote, or not. But again, I really want to see buy-in from the residents to see, what their appetite is on this. And I don't, I think I was at a community meeting and someone said, well, the reason it's not going to pass is because you're not selling kittens and puppies, which is what the last GO bond was. I don't think so. I have a very good faith in our residents and our taxpayers to know and understand that we have infrastructure needs, and they're going to do the responsible thing and want to vote in favor of this. So I think that's a much better approach. I mean, if you start bifurcating specific projects and saying, well, it's only going to be $5, $10 a month extra, you're picking winners and losers, right? I want the whole city to be a winner in this.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just ask.
Commissioner Salinas and then Commissioner Fernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Fernandez. I just have a question here. Is there a way that we could, and I want to add, by the way, that I also advocated for this to go to the voters because I think our voters are smart and I think they would do the right thing. And again, this impacts and affects and it helps the whole city. So I feel fairly confident that this would pass. I mean, who knows? I don't have a crystal ball, but I do think our voters are very, very smart and they understand that this needs to happen and we would have their buy-in versus not. But I do have a question because what if we did a revenue bond for water sewer rate and then did the GO bond for storm water. Could we do something like that, Jason?
yeah.
And then what would be the rates there? Would be
Okay, let me, you did ask me that, and I'm trying to do a little back of the cocktail napkin, but yes, and I think because there's parties on both sides, right? Utility rates and GO, and that kind of splits the model a bit. But yes, that absolutely could be done. The stormwater component, if it was GO, which is anti-flooding, and I think that's one thing that, you talk about, where the revenue bond is water and sewer. That is truly, you use what, you pay for what you use. I understand that concept. I think that passes some good muster. So on the GO side, it would be 337 million-ish for stormwater. And if I I just tried to do very back of the cocktail napkin for my model here, and taking that 337 into the 783, which is the total, and splitting that's around 43%. So if I just took the tax impact to the median out in 2035, which is the highest, it would be about $84 a year. And in 2029, which would be the first year debt service, around $25 per year to cover the stormwater component. Back of the cocktail napkin, we'd have to go back and refine and get very specific numbers, which we could do if this comes out of committee this way for a commission discussion. And then on the utility rate side, I think in talking to the team beforehand, again, back to the cocktail napkin, instead of that around $15 a month, let's say, it would be closer to half of that amount, I believe. It would be like at a $7 to $8 per month range if you just covered water sewer. So you can cut the utility rate increases in half by delivering that through revenue bonds on the water sewer side, and on the stormwater side, if you issued that as GO bond. I think that's a way of having much lower rate increases than was originally contemplated. It's kind of splits the difference a little bit. It shares on the property tax side, and it gets to that mutual benefit kind of situation where I think maybe from a voter's perspective, flooding, they can really, especially now, and those of us who lived here a long time remember it was dry and it's a lot more wet, maybe you can get behind that perspective and say this is going to tackle flooding citywide because you go from First Street to North Shore D. But water and sewer, it is what you use. I turn the water off when I'm brushing my teeth, little things like that. You have kind of things that you can do to mitigate those costs. So those are the back of the cocktail napkin. About half of your utility rates increases would be cut in half before it gets to CPI out in 32. And my very back of the cocktail napkin numbers are, let's call it an $85 max millage for a median homesteaded property value. So yes, that is a definite.
I'd like to make a motion to bring. I'd like to make a motion
Hold
here.
on, Commissioner Bott. It's Commissioner Salinas, then Fernandez, then Bott.
I'd like to make a motion for us to bring that to the full commission to explore that model.
Yeah, I'm fine to explore a lot of things. We're going to have a laundry list of stuff at the end. Commissioner Fernandez and then Commissioner Bott.
Yeah, and just 2 points, Mr. Chair. I think you brought forward a concept where you're being very, very responsible and taking great leadership and thinking of those projects that truly are shovel ready. If I could ask the Public Works Director or the CFO, how many NIPs do we actually have in this presentation that we had today for the bond? How many neighborhood improvement projects were contemplated in it?
There were 5 total. It's 4, but 2 phases on one of them.
I think it's, First Street,
Okay.
First Street, West Avenue, North Shore D, Normandy. And I think, and just so you know, on the cash side, it's not in the debt model, but there is design work for 1 or 2 other ones.
Yes.
Flamingo and Nautilus, and I may have some of them off, but, so there is design work, because we don't want to issue GO bond, because that was that model for design, not construction. So
And
there's more
before
work being
Commissioner
done.
Fernandez makes his comments, I'll put another thing in that I think he'll allude to as well that went into my thinking when looking at those specific projects is we have significant amounts of state funding for those 2 projects, First Street and West Avenue, where if we don't move forward, we lose those. Those total $55 million, right? So if we don't do those projects immediately, we're in danger of losing that state funding. So it's not just shovel ready, but those 2 projects specifically, we have $55 million of state funding that could dry up if this gets voted down and we don't have a pathway forward. So begrudgingly, I'd be fine sending this broader swath to the electorate, but I'm not willing to not make a hard decision and risk $55 million in state funding. So Commissioner Fernandez, I'll turn it over to you with just adding that additional component as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think you're being very reasonable where perhaps we identify, okay, which are the these handful or these very few low hanging fruit projects that are ready to shovel ready to move forward, and where we may even have funding that we may lose, and identify those, segregate those, proceed with a revenue bond on those, because the impact on the customer, on our users, wouldn't be as significant, because quite frankly, the problem is the rate increase that was brought to us, the sheer significance of it, when we talk about $1,000, within a few years on an annual basis to our residents on something that isn't a luxury. Water and sewer is a bare necessity, and they can't do without it. And so when we were talking about $1,000, that is quite significant. Now, if we go back and we say, okay, we have this handful of projects, these are truly ready, shovel ready, and we actually may put ourselves in a worse fiscal position, because we'll lose state funding if we don't move forward on those now, and look at what the rate increase would be on that, and then work on everything else through a general obligation bond that would also be of a lesser impact to the residents. I'm not opposed to that. I'll be open-minded. Because I see the merit in that, Mr. Chair, and I'm willing to be open-minded on it. I also like the idea that Commissioner Matheus Salinas was just putting out there. I want to hear more about this idea about focusing stormwater on the bond. I know that's included now, and one of the reasons why I like doing stormwater through the general obligation bond is because right now, we have this ERU system for stormwater, where we rely on these classifications and formulas that might not really capture the difference in how different homes and different properties of different lot coverages use the stormwater drainage system, and everyone's pretty much paying the same towards it, no matter how more significant their impact is. And so I always liked the idea of the stormwater system being through a bond, because it'll be more equitable in its distribution of the impact. But Mr. Chair, I just wanted to put in there, I kind of like where you were going with that, because they're certainly not all projects are the same, and they're not all in the same phases. And I do think that there might be a couple that might be more urgent to move forward on, that it might be prudent to consider what you're suggesting.
John,
I'm sorry, I think I was going to be up next.
Commissioner Bott, then Commissioner Suarez.
Thank you, Joe. I just want to add to your list of $55 million at risk. It's another $10 million for North Shore D. So just so we're all operating with the information.
Yeah, that wasn't exhaustive. Those are.
No, I know.
Yeah, I'm fine to.
Yeah. So the other thing is, I wanted to echo Monica's, I know I can't vote on this, but I absolutely co-sign her idea of coming back and bifurcating these. When I was talking about bifurcating things, I was not talking about choosing projects and winners and losers, but types of projects which are more urgent. And so, bifurcating the way Monica has suggested, it feels exactly right to me. So I have really encouraged the voting members of this committee to take that up and bring that back. Thank you.
Commissioner Suarez.
John? Just want to make sure.
Sorry, we're trying to.
the grant funding portion, are we at risk, or is it still okay as long as we're working?
So for North Shore D in particular, that grant funding is for design currently. We are looking at grant opportunities for construction, but from the design perspective, we should be okay, as long as the design is finished within the time period in which it's on
South
track.
Fifth, for example,
I'm sorry?
for all of the projects.
For First Street, that does have to be constructed. We will run out of time if we don't move forward on that.
What is the timeline?
Well, I think what he's asking is we would be at risk on the West Avenue and the First Street if we're just not going to build it, because we just don't have the financing mechanism. As for deliverance of that, I believe First Street is in design and permitting. And I think we talked about you would be in a position to be maybe in construction in the next 12 months?
I think it was a little more than
Was
that.
it 18? 2029.
Yeah.
So there's a permitting
We
phase.
have time. We're not going to lose grant funding in the next 6 months. If let's say, for example, we want to go to a geo bond to see if we can get this funded through the operating.
Correct.
We're not going to lose it in the next 6 months, correct?
No, not the next 6 months.
No, yeah.
Just want to make sure that we're clear on that. So for those who are watching, at least until 2029, we're okay.
Because it's in, that project's in permitting. North Shore D is pretty much out of funds. So starting July 1st, that project will be put on pause until we, identify, because it's a big number. It's like $135 million for the next piece. And then West Avenue is
Okay,
was
so
almost
look,
there.
we need to move forward. I certainly don't think we should be deferring this to next month, because we will not have enough time to put this on the ballot. We can discuss it between now and.
There is
Well,
a
my
motion
motion on the floor was to bring this to the commission.
Perfect. I'll second.
Okay, thank you. But it was bifurcating the stormwater.
Well, how about
That'd be
we,
a geo
how about
bond.
how about we have staff bring all the options and we decide at the commission
Okay.
between, first and second
Gonna be
reading.
a lot of options.
When I see those faces, I know to let this guy talk.
No, a lot of options have been presented. There's been suggested direction as far as us ranking what's critical, and then we're talking about neighborhood improvement projects, doing those. That's the bulk of the ask. Water and sewer is priority. That's what we are obligated as a utility to deliver to the residents. So if anybody asks me what's critical in here,
So can you send a letter to commission breaking those out?
breaking out the water and sewer critical
Yes,
needs.
just those.
Yeah, we can, if we can take those projects and break those costs into
But
the
some
water, sewer,
projects-
stormwater.
Some projects include both,
The
correct?
the NIP specifically, you have to do both, and that was what we were kind of talking about on the side. And if I can, I think we have a path to continue this discussion a bit at the commission, but try to refine this down into a couple of
look forward to
options.
that.
I know there was a motion, it was seconded technically, was to return to commission with a favorable recommendation to prepare a GeoBond ballot question for stormwater, and to increase utility rates for water and sewer. That being said, as part of the item, the other options can be, I think what Commissioner Magazine was speaking about, and I think Commissioner Fernandez and Bott were weighing in also, is what would it look like if we just ran a model to.
If I can, not even what it would look like. My motion will be carving out First Street, West Avenue, because we're at the 1 yard line, and we have $55 million in grant money for that. So even if voters said no, I'd say we have to go forward with that anyway, because we'll lose $55 million. It may not be for 6 months, but even if they said no to the broader menu, which may or may not happen, we would need to go forward with that. So let's just do that now through the utility. That'll be de minimis, $3, $4 per month, right? We could find offsetting out of our general fund. We're going forward with that no matter what. So let's carve that out and start that process right now. We've been waiting for 10 years. Let's just do that, right? We can make that decision. Not only are we at the 1 yard line, but we have $55 million we're not going to give up. So let's just admit we're going to do that come hell or high water. Sorry for the pun. If there's other projects like that, I'm happy to see the administration, given those, kind of directions that I put in place where we're at the 1 yard line, very significant amount of state funding that could be at risk. highlight those if they exist and we could consider them. But at least for those two projects, First Street and West Avenue, I want to carve
And
that out.
Normandy, North Shore D, please.
Well, I will leave that to Jason because there's a different component where it's like that's a design, but I want to leave that to the experts to explain, not me. But for those, those two where we're at the 1 yard line where West Avenue is going to happen next week, well, next month, hopefully. But for those two, that'll be my motion to send those that we vote to move those projects forward with funding through utility bonds.
Okay.
And then send the broader package.
As an
I'll
option.
second that.
Yes.
As an option. And
Yeah, if
and then
I.
the other option is the whole shebang on a.
Yes, if I may. Yes, so we'll do, Commissioner Salinas, Matias Salinas' motion seconded by Commissioner Suarez with the add-on to prepare other options, including but not limited to, an all utility rate increase cost to ensure First Street and West Avenue would be paid for, and perhaps an option that funds other important shovel-ready or design-ready projects as determined by Public Works. So you have some you have some flexibility perhaps to look through that critical needs of ultra-critical needs, because there's some DOT work that we're contractually obligated to find money for. So let's have we'll call it a Public Works slimmed down, very slimmed down model to see what utility rate.
Not even Ozempic? I mean, like Reddit TrueTide slimmed down. Okay.
So can I clarify West Avenue Phase 3, just for the record, and First Street Phase 1 and 2?
Yeah, that's a good question. Is it West Avenue phase? Because the whole thing is designed. I believe all four phases are
So tell me, are there only two for First Street or are there three?
There's 4 phases, but
Okay.
3
1
and
and 2
4
are
will
together?
go
Yeah,
together
the
in
ones
future.
that are mission critical, right?
1 and 2.
Not the 3 and 4, and
Okay.
that will give you the ability to leave here and go start paving Washington Avenue from 5th Street to First Street. Okay, because 3 and 4 are never going to happen. Okay, they're never going to happen. So let's just admit that now. Let's fund 1 and 2. Let's pave Washington Avenue from 5th to 2nd, which I know you're going to do because it was a commission item. But it's things like that we shouldn't even be including for this revenue block, because that's what makes it $5 billion, and it's just not going to happen. But we can get 95% of the way there by being realistic and funding things like Phase 1 and 2. And then we can also move forward as a city. Does anybody see what a difference paving 17th Street make? It's almost like we live in America. It is beautiful, right? But the bang for our buck that we got from that, John, thank you to you and your team. Incredible work you did. Let's see that on Washington Avenue from 5th to, I guess, call it First Street right there. It is an embarrassment, right? So doing this, highlighting the critical projects that we move forward with also allows us to move forward as a city.
Gotcha. And so we'll show that motion, the GO and stormwater, utility rates for water and sewer is option 1. Option 2 will be the one we spoke about, First Street, Phase 1 and 2, and West Avenue as a utility rate. And then we'll have a third option, which we'll call the Public Works super slim down option. I'll come up with more for Natalie on the minutes will be a little bit more refined term. Yes.
Besides the wastewater.
Well, the water sewer, but probably not stormwater, but it'll give Public Works
know
a
what?
little flexibility.
Stormwater, I think, if we're going to go, can be included in
That'll
the
be a
GO
third,
bond.
Public Works will deliver a third or fourth option, and what that would look like from
And
utility.
Jason, are you?
Jason, can you make sure that everything that has public funding that is not coming from the city is included in one of your critical options, slim down, whatever you want to call it, but I want to see everything that has money at risk that we.
Yes, Commissioner, I
So-
believe that was the chair's intent, was that his option or any other option would include that we're not losing money through a grant. So anything that's grant funded, we'll make sure is in the model.
Okay, thank you.
Jason, do you have an $80 million revenue bond that you're also issuing for water and sewer?
There's already a standing declaration of intent to issue for $85 million, which was about a year or so ago, which I will be issuing, but the existing model had the capacity for that. These rate increases would not be.
What is that for?
There was I think it funded all of 2025's or 26's water sewer needs at that time. It was a laundry list of projects.
Okay.
So I think we have a motion by Commissioner Monax-Salinas and seconded by Commissioner Suarez. May I call the final vote, Chair?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Item passes 3-0.
So we're gonna hear this in June. Great.
Oh, yippee. This will be fun having this with 7 people.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
If we wrap this up early, John, can we, me and you'll go out to Washington Avenue and get this started, or what?
We're getting there. They're finishing up 17th, and then Alton Court has another request, and then Washington.
I know you are being pulled in a million different directions. It literally now as you're walking away from the podium and being pulled back, literally and figuratively being pulled in a million directions. Thank you and your team.
Yes, sir.
Thank
I
you.
will pass that on.
There's probably nobody in more of a political whirlstorm than you and your department right now. Stick with us. What you are doing is as critical to our city as possible. You are a resident that is in the thick of this as both an employee and a resident, and we thank you and your team for the service.
Appreciate
Truly.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Are we done?
No, I'm not going to say the same about you, Jason. My goodness. Yes, let's wrap.
Okay, we're gonna adjourn the meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you all.